Has this ever happened to you? You're traveling with friends in Berchtesgaden, and everyone has a different adventure planned for the day. Ming wants to climb a mountain and take pictures. David and Anna want to find a river and enjoy the sun. And you just want to find a Rhein-Heitsbad Weizenbad. Because you don't go to Berchtesgaden without trying the Rhein-Heitsbad. The problem is my phone has no service in Berchtesgaden, and I still want to know what my friends are doing. That's why on this adventure, we each brought a goTenna mesh. Once paired with your phone, goTenna mesh generates its own radio signal so you can send text and GPS locations using a simple app. No towers, routers, or satellites required. Sent and received. I can send a direct message to David, a group chat to my friends, or broadcast to any goTenna in the area. goTenna has great point-to-point communication range, but with this groundbreaking mesh networking technology, it's possible to double or triple your range by hopping through other goTenna mesh units in the area. You don't even need to know the other users or do anything. It's automatic and private. So I'm able to receive a message from Ming, who's on top of a mountain, because our friends and other goTenna mesh users act as relay points between us. Imagine using this at a music festival or on the slopes. The possibilities are endless. Unlike traditional communication networks, goTenna mesh actually gets stronger the more users join it. We call this people-powered connectivity. One more to go, please.
Please welcome Daniela Perdomo from goTenna and Matt Quinn, tech editor at Quartz.
Thanks for being here with us, Daniela. So I think the video gave us a little bit of an overview of your latest product, but I think maybe we can step back and talk a little bit about how goTenna works. It came out about 2 years ago. You were with us, and so maybe you can give us a little background.
Yeah, so our first product was the first device that enabled you to use the phone you already have on you all the time to communicate even if you don't have any service. And it allowed you to do so in a way that was really intelligent. So normally when you're using iMessage or WhatsApp or whatnot, the reason you're able to text, say, someone specifically is because the tubes of the so-called internet enable it to get there as opposed to just anywhere. And so our first product allowed you to have that experience, the ability to send a message to a specific person, groups of people, get delivery confirmation receipts, all that intelligence that you're used to with the internet, except when you don't have the internet or cell towers for that matter. And our new product, which I have right here, is an advancement on that. So in addition to being able to do what the first one could, this one also allows you to mesh. So it creates a mesh network. And what that means is that essentially if I were to be, let's say, out of point-to-point range of view, if there are other users between us, whether we know them or we don't, the message can go through them. And that happens automatically and privately. And as a result, we're able to create a network that you can count on not just when nothing else is working, but we actually can create a network that gets stronger the more people join it, which I think is, a really interesting idea. The inspiration for the company came in part due to our experience in Hurricane Sandy. We're based in New York, when power and towers went out, and then all of a sudden, even a hyper-connected place was left totally disconnected. And the idea was, how might we be able to combat, the downside of central connectivity, which can lead to both scaling issues and central points of failure.
Right. So what's happened in the last 2 years? So that's where you started, and now you're up to mesh. So what's the response and the use, and maybe the surprising things that have come as this came out, and how people have interacted with it and wanted to?
Sure. So I mean, as you saw in our video, it's used for outdoor activities. We're sold at places like REI, but we've also seen people use it just for everyday connectivity in places that are totally disconnected. I remember one of the first stories I heard about when the first product started shipping was a couple that use it in their little South Dakota town simply to communicate when he's at the pharmacy and she's at the supermarket down the street. There are still a lot of places in even the US that are digitally disconnected or unreliably connected. And so, people use it like that. People use it for travel abroad. People use it for emergencies. Our product has been used by the UN, by military and tactical teams, by search and rescue teams. And what we found is that, there are plenty of places where connectivity is either unavailable, unreliable, or unaffordable where a product like this can be useful.
Maybe let's talk a little bit more about some of those rescue applications and the UN using it. These are probably a lot of disaster areas, a lot of remote areas. So, how are you getting it on the ground there?
A lot of it has been inbound. We're a very small team in Brooklyn, and we've been lucky to just get a lot of interest just through the consumer marketing that we've done. But yeah, I mean, it's been used in everything from, frankly, operations in Iraq that I don't know about by special forces, who like it because it's actually silent communication, because we're focused on text and GPS.
And it is encrypted as well. Too.
It's also end-to-end encrypted, and there's by definition no backdoor because there's no servers, towers, or satellites. It's been used in humanitarian missions and definitely in disaster relief. Our first deployment was with a nonprofit called Rescue Global, using it in some floodings in Hanai, India in December last year, which was really interesting to see. And so yeah, I mean, I think that goTenna starts being useful when you don't have service, but I think that local mesh networks, and this is, goTenna Mesh is the first long-range, totally mobile, off-grid, consumer-ready mesh network. It's very much the first of its kind, but I think technology like this, maybe goTenna, maybe something else, hopefully goTenna is a part of it, will be part of even everyday communication when you're on-grid. Because there's different kinds of, there's different parts of the communication stack that can do different things well. And what we're focused on is resilient, essential, local communications that can, be many miles, but not necessarily, watching cat videos on YouTube.
Right. So there will be plenty of ways to do that as well.
Yes.
But how? So it seems like the really natural ways that you're going about bringing this out to market is to the adventurers, to people who want to be off the grid, who want to communicate in this way. How do you take a next step beyond there?
That's a great question. I think that we're trying with goTenna Mesh to attract some, we just announced it 10 days ago, so it's just on pre-order. We start shipping at the end of the year. But what we're trying to do is attract the kinds of early adopters who believe in the blue sky possibility of mesh. So look, initially, I presume a lot of people will buy it for the same reason they bought our first product, for specific off-grid activities, that they have planned, whether it's Disney World, Burning Man, a trip to Tahiti, whatever you're doing. But I hope that by making it affordable, light, and easy to potentially have on you all the time, that especially some of our early adopters, will be excited about just seeing what happens if they leave it on. So, we have a UI that shows how many times someone meshed through you, how many times your message went through other people, because it's invisible, right? A network is by definition, a network of this kind is by definition invisible, and so how do we make it real and make it something that people feel invested in? And, I don't know the answer to that question, other than to hope that with, enough density in the future, it's something that's just part of technology essentials. And of course, it can be integrated into a phone. In fact, we did an experiment this year with one of the big tech companies here in Silicon Valley. What goTenna really is about building the smart wireless architecture that enables that intelligent mesh networking.
How did those tests go?
It went really well. You can make it, even smaller than this. And, we're a hardware company in part because this just doesn't, the ability, what goTenna lets you do just isn't possible with the hardware in your phone. But that doesn't mean it can't be integrated into other things. Right. And so we actually have developed, or will be developing integration boards that can be put into different things. Drones, it can be put into phones. It can technically go anywhere.
Right. So I guess one way for this to take off for you, but this to become as essential for somebody in their emergency supply kit as candles or matches and the flashlight, and to have a goTenna. But the real strength from this is going to be the network effect, right? It's going to be able to, for you having that alone is not going to get you that far.
Right.
You need other people in this room to also.
Yeah, we sell them in pairs. What's been really interesting to see is in the pre-order of this product, but also, we've sold tens of thousands of our first product at this point. People tend to buy, we sell them in pairs, but people actually buy 4 or more. That's the most popular purchase. And so people are building their little networks. Fine, maybe it's just you and your family on a trip or on a ski mountain. But we've already heard of instances where people actually discover each other through the public chat because they just expect no one else to be around, and they realize, oh, my private conversation is actually, in the public forum, and here's this other group of people using it. And my hope is that with time, you're going to run into more people like that. And I hope that'll be more possible, in part by the fact that we can now actually address demand outside the US. So communications are heavily regulated. Up until now, our first product, we can only ship to the US, but the new one, we can ship to 49 countries, which makes a big difference.
Right, I think, so thinking about the theme of this conference, the next billion, I think you could probably think about this type of low bandwidth. Some of the things it really has going for it, it's mobile, it's low cost, and it's scalable to be able to get it into people's hands in this country. But here you're starting mostly in the U.S. and is going to adventurers and people that can afford it. And while we call it low cost in other areas, it may not be considered low cost. But to be able to get it on the ground there, you do have a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, the interface for using goTenna is the phone you already have on you. And by definition, a smartphone is something that a privileged, I don't even know if 1 billion people have smartphones.
Right.
I think over 1 billion people have mobile phones, but I'm not sure how many people have smartphones like you and I do. And so definitely, I don't think technology becomes disruptive until it's actually accessible to anybody, and we have to get there. And my hope is that with the scale of a consumer business and our, we have a first professional product coming out next year, that we're in a position by 2018 to be piloting things that, maybe either don't work with a smartphone or work with, whatever is available then to people in those markets. And, how could we responsibly, scalably, affordably, in a bottoms-up way, connect totally isolated communities, first to each other, and then eventually, if they want, out into the rest of connectivity. I think there's a real order of operations to bringing communication to isolated communities. There's an organization we work with called Telecommunications Without Borders. They're exactly what they sound like. They're basically like Doctors Without Borders, but they set up humanitarian communication operations in disaster zones, everything from refugee camps to emergency medical facilities in Aleppo. I mean, they're everywhere. And they also, when they're not doing disaster response, they're setting up, they're trying to bridge the digital divide, but it is not by bringing people, in my opinion, Facebook newsfeed tomorrow. It is about enabling the essential communication that we all in some ways take for granted, unless you don't have service, in which case you freak out. But it's the ability to say, where are you? Come find me. Are you okay? Like that ability is what we're focused on, and is sort of the beginning. And so we're creating a parallel off-grid network, but we can also interconnect with central connectivity.
It does seem like we've moved so far beyond these basics of communication. Thinking about our $700-800 phone that we have on us right now does not have this very basic capability, and that as we think about the rest of the world coming online, we do have to almost go back to those basics. Potentially. So a question that we've gotten is the mesh network totally dependent on user devices, or does the company have some infrastructure to make communication possible with less devices available?
That's a great question. So we see ourselves as building the framework for actually people-powered infrastructure. So it's infrastructure powered by people with regular phones, eventually with like base stations, with backhaul into satellite links, the internet, and everything else. But the mesh becomes just certainly more useful the more people have it. We're not building infrastructure, but think of it as infrastructure-free infrastructure, right? And as a result, it can be as fluid as the people who use it. So, in certain situations, you will go to a crowded event, and even though you have 5 bars, you can't get a message through. It's because too many people are using it. What we want to do is the exact opposite, which is that the more people join it, our network, the stronger it gets. And that's, in my opinion, the way we have to scale communication. You can't depend solely on top-down heavy infrastructure that requires a lot of maintenance and has scalability and failure problems. And that's why I'm really excited by things that might sound kind of silly right now, like Facebook and Google talking about, they've been talking for a long time, and I can't wait until, they actually pilot programs like these, but basically, drones and balloons that will fly around and, deliver information or pick up information as they go around. And I think that's what the future of infrastructure looks like. It's mobile, it's low cost, and it, can plug into hopefully low cost, low power devices on the ground, perhaps something like goTenna. In fact, goTenna, because it has so much range, you can get many miles in many situations straight up. It could communicate directly to anything flying overhead.
Are you talking to Google and Facebook about that?
We've spoken to all sorts of organizations, and we work with some of them. For us, the big potential of our technology was to be able to get to the point where the mesh network worked in a scalable way, because the mesh network that we've developed has never scalably worked outside of academic and theoretical, experiments, and outside of very, very heavy, and we're talking tens of thousands of dollar systems that are, the size of a backpack. Sometimes they weigh up to 50 pounds within the military. So this is the first time it has been, this weighs 1.7 ounces and fits in the palm of your hand. You can put it in your pocket, snap it to your bag or whatnot. Just, that's what we were focusing on first. And I think the potential of our technology is so greatly enhanced by mesh that now is when we're looking into not just talking about integrations with other systems, but actually doing that.
What's the education hold making people understand this? Because we talked before, saying some people just don't get it.
Yeah, a lot of people will say, particularly in New York, where we're based, oh, it's for when I'm in the subway, because it's the only time New Yorkers, who have, I guess, a short memory from Sandy or 9/11, frankly.
Would it work there?
Don't have service.
It would work. It
would work if with other people in the subway. We're still subject to the laws of physics, so we're not necessarily always going to get through however many feet of sediment and concrete and steel are between you and the street. But yeah, so some people don't get it. So that's why the early adopters have been, people who spend time outdoors, people who travel, people who prepare for emergencies. There's a lot of people, I've gotten to know those communities online and in person, and who just are preparing for whatever it is. We call them the A to Z market, apocalypse to zombies. They're out there, and they'll do better when any of those things happen than the rest of us. The education, you start with early adopters. And I think working with organizations like search and rescue teams and fire, for instance, and disaster relief nonprofits, it just, I think people start to feel like, oh, if they can depend on it, then I can use it when I'm at Coachella, or when I'm on a family vacation and we don't want to pay to roam. And it starts there. But, I think with meshing, it's such a new idea because it's been so theoretical for so long that we just have to use metaphors. It's like daisy chaining, it's relaying, it's hopping, and people understand immediately. And then they're like, why don't you do more? They didn't know it existed, but then they want more of it.
Right.
But I'm really excited. People are registering on a website called imeshyou.com where they're registering their nodes, and you can start to see, you can register anonymously or you can register with actual information about yourself, and you can start to see I bought 2 of these, maybe or 4, but here's 15 people around me already, particularly in early adopting places like San Francisco, where if something were to happen, or if I just want to experiment with this, the mesh might actually work, be meshing on day one.
When you were here at the Next Billion 2 years ago, you presented right before a technologist from one of the large wireless companies. They will remain nameless. But you told me that once you were both backstage at the same time, he was very angry with you. What would make a very large company angry at you, and what you were maybe trying to do, or maybe how you were explaining what was going on in our infrastructure?
Right. So for context, it was the CTO of a large carrier. And he started yelling at me the second I came on. I didn't know who he was. And I was told after he stopped yelling at me, because then he just left, he was saying, you don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong. And I think he was reacting to, I was asked, why hasn't anyone done something like this before? And part of my answer was that a lot of people, when they think of connectivity, they are thinking actually about cat videos on YouTube, because that's what we think of as the internet now. That's what we think of essential communication. I'm being facetious, but yes. we're talking about being able to see all your emails, read the news, watch videos, and so I said part of it is that it's not obvious to look at what some people consider junk spectrum, which we operate on very low frequencies. But the value of junk spectrum is so-called junk spectrum is that you can propagate over great distances. So all of a sudden you can actually create communication yourself instead of plugging into it that works over, in some situations, our record for our first product is 26 miles, point to point. That's not common. Usually we like to say you're going to get up to 3 or 4 miles point to point, but now with mesh you could increase, right? And so I said part of it was just it's not obvious. People are not thinking about that. They're thinking about the other end of communication. But the other part was that in my opinion, I can't know for sure, but I think part of it also is that, your phone is made in part by manufacturers who are very closely aligned with carriers, and carriers inherently control a very expensive centralized infrastructure that is in their interest to, keep as, the monopoly for communication. And I said that, and he didn't like it, and I thought, well, you're angry about something. But I think that really our product is not necessarily going to be in the future, as we continue to advance and have more functionality and let you do more than just data communication, is not going to replace cell networks. By the laws of physics, every kind of network communication you use, whether it's Wi-Fi, that's 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, or this is very nerdy stuff, but or if it's consumer walkie-talkies, that's usually like 900 megahertz. And down to, our first product was about 150 megahertz. Now this is in the 900 megahertz range. This new one, they all have different properties, and they can't do everything perfectly. You get something, but you have to give something up. So we give up high bandwidth for distance. With Wi-Fi and cell radios, you give up distance, but you get a lot of bandwidth. And so actually, for me, it was shocking to hear that every carrier, for instance, in New York, pays tens of thousands of dollars a month to rent space on the top of every single building in New York in order to be able to get your message through. And if you have a dead zone in your building, you're like, I hate this, I hate Verizon, or I hate AT&T, or whatnot. But it's really hard. And so, it's just, that's what they can do well. They can get, the internet and phone calls across the world and the country. What we can do is local communication. There's no reason why you should, if you're texting me, and I'm sitting here or I'm in the other part of the building, why doesn't it go straight to me or through people in this room? Why are we using the same network that's better for something else for that? And that's all. That's what I think. I think all communication technologies are complementary and necessary because they all do different things.
That's great. Well, I think that actually is all of our time. Thank you so much, Daniela.
Thank you.
Thank you.